Welcome to Radio Row, live at Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. I'm Roy Kessel for Sports Philanthropy Network, and we're very excited to have with us Dr. Liotta. Thank you for making time to join us on the show today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We're very excited to hear more about the work that you're doing. I know you've had so much success going through your career. Tell everybody a little bit about your background and then your passion that brought you to work on all of these.
Right. So I got interested in drug development during the HIV pandemic. I had a lot of friends who were smart, creative, talented, and they were just dying and nothing was happening. So I felt like I had to do something, and I took the plunge and got involved in drug development. And we ended up developing two of the most important HIV drugs, which are now frontline therapies still today. And then I branched out into other areas: hepatitis B, hepatitis C. The company I formed created a cure for hepatitis C, and that was really great. And so I got pretty good at it, and then more and more I started focusing on people more than diseases. So when we see athletes, we love to watch them, right? They do things that we wish we could do. But what happens when they get hurt? Who's there for them? What can we do? And I've got particularly interested in brain injuries and what can we do to stabilize people immediately after a concussion or a traumatic brain injury so that they don't have these horrible long-term consequences.
Yeah, I think what's really hard, and we've talked about it quite a bit this week, is that most parts of our body, medical science has evolved to a point that we can get with relatively consistent consensus of opinion, right? Somebody broke an arm, we know what that means. Somebody tore an ACL, we know what that means. Most injuries we can say we can identify, we can fix, right? We can rehabilitate. With the brain, it's not an exact science. We're still learning so much about it, and there's still, people want an easy solution, as if this was a wand I could wave over your head and get a red light or green light, everything's a go or not, and if not, it's going to pinpoint what's wrong. And we don't have that yet. So talk a little bit about all of these different therapeutics that you've been involved with.
Well, again, they span a lot of different diseases. We developed a therapeutic during COVID-19 for the SARS-CoV-2. You learn the trade after a while, and then you apply your knowledge to the specific events. So you mentioned the brain is different than the other parts of the body. We can't just put a prosthetic device on and that person is fixed. And the damage that can be done by a bad collision is oftentimes permanent unless we can arrest the inflammation that's caused immediately. That, to me, is the secret. So we talk about better helmets, we talk about better diagnostics, and all of those things are important. But what happens when the person gets injured? What can we do on the spot to stop the progression of that disease? And this doesn't just mean the NFL. It means the high school football, the soccer, the kids. The damage from concussions is cumulative. How do we prevent that? We've got what we hope are some really innovative solutions to that I think could possibly make a difference.
And I think that you talk about those innovative solutions. One of the things that's challenging is we don't have a great way, let's call it, to run a lot of iterations of this. We don't want to keep beating people over the head and say, well, this worked and this didn't work. And so it's very challenging because what people have been through in their life, what outside influences they have, right? Some genetic components, some that are sleep, diet, exercise, all of this impacts the brain health.
Right.
And so we're left trying to solve problems that are really a puzzle, a mosaic of all of these different factors that come together. So how do you go about sorting through that and sifting through those iterations to come up with a
Yeah.
successful result?
That's an excellent question. It's a process. So what we do when we have a drug candidate is we try to profile it. And we profile it first in relatively easy kinds of assays that aren't very expensive. And if it survives all of those, that is, if it meets all the criteria that we set in the beginning, then we start looking at it in animal models. And the animal models can be very, very helpful. So in a traumatic brain injury, you don't have to go from the lab bench to a human. You can look at it in different animal models, and most of the time we start off with mice models because they're the easiest and least expensive, and we see what happens. Can we suppress all the that inflammatory cascade that creates all the tissue damage that we see, and that's how we kind of bring our drug candidates forward. And if they survive those tests, then eventually we go into humans and see if we can solve the problem.
Well, and that's a long process, right?
Correct.
I think one of the struggles in today's world, right, people are used to this immediacy effect, right? They've got a phone, they've got a computer. I need an answer to something. I can snap my finger, I can ask ChatGPT, and I'm going to get an answer. Now, it may not be a very sophisticated answer, it may be not a very scientific answer, right? But people are used to that speed. And obviously anything involving medicine, clinical trials, anything like that, you're talking at minimum months and months and months, and
Years.
often years and years before you can get any real approval.
Absolutely. And I think too many people also get scammed by these quick sounding solutions that don't really hold water when you do a deeper dive. So but again, for me, the reason I do these things is just a passion to make a difference in people and change, improve the health of the public. And athletes are kind of one of the things we value most are the people who have these tremendous athletic capabilities, and to see them just go down and not be able to proceed, but sometimes even worse than that. There's got to be better ways of doing it, and we've got a lot of hints from nature about how we can protect the brain from damage, and we're pursuing them. And I think I don't want to get into the technicalities of the science because your audience will just promptly go to sleep. But
we have a very motivated audience that loves this topic, so share a few insights.
Well, if you things like traumatic brain injury, concussion, stroke, subarachnoid hemorrhage, these all affect the brain in slightly different but somewhat similar ways. There's always some cutoff of oxygen to key parts of the brain. Sometimes it's trauma, sometimes it's not. But the question is, how do you correct it quickly? So we've had a number of solutions. When any blood supply gets cut off to the brain or any other part of your body, that tissue that's affected switches to an anaerobic metabolism. So when we run, our muscles start to hurt, and it's because we're running out of oxygen, and so we switch to anaerobic metabolism, and we produce lactic acid, and eventually that just takes over. So what we've done is we've created some therapeutics that are more potent under acidic conditions. So the important part about that is, if you get some kind of injury, you don't need to worry about how to target that particular spot, because that injury is going to be acidified, that region, and so our drugs can work more potently there and not really worry about doing anything bad to normal tissue. And so it builds in a kind of selectivity.
So it self-identifies
Correct.
where that is,
Exactly.
and that's a fantastic.
And that's one of the approaches we've taken. And we've used other hints from nature. Did you know that of all the different people who suffer traumatic brain injury, the people who by far have the best rate of recovery are pregnant women? Isn't that fascinating?
It's a fascinating fact.
Right. So just the quick story is that when they get pregnant, progesterone levels in their brain go up 15 to 50 fold higher, not 15%, 15x to 50x. And that proved to be neuroprotective. So there's a hint for us. Let's take something based on progesterone and use it for these traumatic brain injuries to suppress inflammation.
It's fascinating. We appreciate you taking
Thank
the
you.
time to come on with us. We've got your card here.
Yes.
And you said your impact is for brain injury therapeutics.
Right.
So we appreciate all of that. We're going to stick this right up here. We're getting full on our wall of philanthropy.
Congratulations. That
So
you're this
thank
full.
you.
Hey, it was
Thank
a
you
pleasure.
for making time for us and for all of our viewers and listeners. We
Yeah.
appreciate you taking time to join Sports Philanthropy Network live from Radio Row at Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. This is Roy Kessel signing off for Sports Philanthropy Network. Please remember to live generously. Thank you.